At some point, human societies crossed a line and everything changed. Villages became cities, strangers replaced neighbors, and order had to be created. Across the world, different people faced the same problem and found the same solution: the state. Not by chance, but by necessity, and we're still living inside it today. For most of human prehistory, we lived in small, mobile groups. No rulers, no taxes, no armies. Decisions were made collectively, resources were shared, and social hierarchies, where they existed, were based on personal reputation and kinship. But around 10,000 years ago, agriculture changed everything. As we covered in episode 2, farming produced food surpluses. Surpluses allowed populations to grow, and growing populations created a problem that small group social logic simply couldn't solve. How do you organize 10,000 people who don't all know each other? Archaeological evidence from sites like Çatalhöyük in modern Turkey, occupied from roughly 9,000 to 7,700 years ago, shows a fascinating transitional moment. Here was a settlement of up to 8,000 people, yet archaeologists find almost no evidence of centralized authority. Houses are roughly equal in size. There are no palaces, no temples dominating the skyline, no obvious administrative center. But this egalitarian arrangement had limits. As cities grew larger, someone had to manage irrigation systems, store grain for lean years, coordinate defense, and resolve disputes between strangers. The state didn't emerge because one man seized power. It emerged because complex societies needed it. The earliest clear evidence of state-level organization comes from Uruk in southern Mesopotamia, modern Iraq. By roughly 5,500 years ago, Uruk had grown into a city of perhaps 40 to 50,000 people, making it almost certainly the largest human settlement on Earth at that time. What made Uruk a state, not just a large village, was its administrative infrastructure. Archaeologists excavating the Ina precinct, the city's ceremonial and administrative core, have uncovered thousands of clay tablets bearing the world's earliest writing. Not stories, but records. Ration lists, tax receipts, labor accounts, the bureaucratic machinery of a functioning government. At the center of this system was the temple. In Mesopotamia, the earliest states were theocratic, meaning religious and political authority were fused. The temple didn't just manage worship, it managed the economy. Temple storehouses redistributed grain to workers. Temple administrators assigned labor duties. The god owned the city, and the priest-king ruled in the god's name. This is attested in the Sumerian king list, a remarkable document that names kings stretching back to before the flood, blending mythology and genuine historical memory. What exactly makes a state? Political scientists and historians generally identify three essential features: a centralized authority, a monopoly on legitimate violence, meaning an army and police, and a system of taxation and redistribution. All three appear in the early Mesopotamian evidence. Taxation is documented in extraordinary detail. Tablets from the city of Gersu, dating to around 4,300 years ago, record grain deliveries, labor obligations, and livestock counts with bureaucratic precision. One archive, the so-called Ur-3 administrative texts, contains over 100,000 tablets, cataloging the economic activity of an entire empire. This is not primitive record-keeping. This is a state. Military organization appears in the Royal Standard of Ur, a stunning artifact dated to roughly 4,500 years ago, now in the British Museum, which depicts organized infantry, chariots, and prisoners of war in vivid detail. This isn't a raid. This is a standing army under centralized command. And law-written, public, enforceable law appears in the Code of Ur-Nammu, dated to roughly 4,100 years ago, making it the world's oldest surviving law code. It establishes penalties for everything from murder to the wrongful accusation of witchcraft, replacing blood feuds with state-administered justice. The state wasn't just organizing labor. It was redefining right and wrong. What makes the emergence of the states so remarkable is that it wasn't just a Mesopotamian invention. Around the same period, roughly 5,000 to 4,000 years ago, recognizable state structures appeared independently in at least 3 other regions. In Egypt, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under the first pharaoh traditionally identified as Narmer, documented on the famous Narmer palette dated to around 5,000 years ago, created one of history's most durable state systems. The pharaoh was not just a king but a god, and the entire Egyptian economy was organized around the palace and temple. In the Indus Valley, cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, occupied from roughly 4,500 years ago, show sophisticated urban planning, standardized brick sizes, drainage systems, and what appear to be administrative buildings. Intriguingly, unlike Mesopotamia and Egypt, archaeologists find no evidence of royal palaces or monumental rulers' tombs. The Indus state, if that's what it was, may have been organized differently, perhaps more collective, perhaps more mercantile. In China, the Erlitou culture, dated to roughly 3,800 to 3,500 years ago, shows the earliest evidence of palatial architecture, bronze ritual vessels, and long-distance elite trade networks, the hallmarks of emerging state power. Here is what should stop you cold. In at least 4 separate places, without any contact with each other, human beings facing the same problem. How to organize large, complex societies arrived at almost exactly the same solution. Centralized authority, bureaucracy, taxation, a monopoly on force, written law. That's not coincidence. That's something deeper. Something that tells us the state isn't just a political choice. It may be an almost inevitable response to a certain level of human complexity. The first rulers didn't seize power in a vacuum. They filled a void that complexity created. And once that system existed, once there were armies, tax collectors, written laws, and gods who endorsed it, all the world could never go back. Every government that has ever existed, from the empires of antiquity to the nations of today, is running a variation of the same operating system, first booted up in Uruk, over 5,000 years ago. Next time you pay a tax, remember, you're doing exactly what a Sumerian farmer did. And someone, somewhere, is keeping records.